Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Edulastic for Science webinar. I'm hoping that you can see me and hear me okay, and you also should be able to see my screen at this time. If you could confirm in the chat, I would really appreciate it. So yeah, like I said, welcome to today's Edulastic for Science webinar. We are excited to be here, and I'm thankful that all of you are here and joining us today. We have several great panelists online today who are going to be walking you through how they use Edulastic and digital assessment in their science classroom. So in advance, thank you to Tina, Cheryl, Christopher, and Patricia for being here today and for sharing how you use Edulastic with your students. We're really excited. Also on the line with me today is my colleagues Ileana Betancourt and Bill Storm from Edulastic. Bill Storm and Ileana will be helping to answer questions in the chat and in the Q&A bubble, and making sure that when you leave today's webinar, you have all the information that you were hoping to get. So like I said, thanks for being here. I'm going to give just a quick introduction before passing it off to our great panelists. Alrighty, so before we dive into things, just a few quick housekeeping things to go over. The first, I see everybody is already testing out the chat. If you could continue testing out the chat, that would be awesome. If everybody wants to share where they're tuning in from and then what their role is in education, that would be great. In addition, I also launched a poll a few minutes ago. This asks how familiar you are with Edulastic, and then similarly, it also asks what your role is in education. So yeah, in the chat, I see people tuning in from all over the place: Boston, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Dayton, Ohio, a school administrator. Awesome. Chemistry and physics teacher, Diamond Bar High School, New York City. Awesome. Welcome. So many people. Great. Knoxville, Tennessee. Another California. I'm in California as well. It's a sunny day here. I have some sun coming in on my face. A physics teacher, another Tennessee, Central California, Arkansas. Wow, great. Thank you everybody for being here today. That's really amazing. My last little piece of housekeeping is our Q&A bubble. If you have official questions that you would like answered during today's webinar, please enter them into the Q&A bubble that you see at the bottom of your screen. This helps myself and Ileana and Bill and our awesome panelists keep track of those questions, and we will either type a response back to you or we will get to them during our designated Q&A period at the end of the webinar. Alrighty, so I wanted to point out that today's webinar focuses on Edulastic in the science classroom. Our panelists have some really great stuff to share, but with that, this is not necessarily a brand new Learn the Basics of Edulastic webinar. If you are looking for that, you can check out this Edulastic 101 training on our YouTube channel, and maybe Ileana can share the link to that in the chat. This is really recent. It was just from January 6th or January 11th. So we will go ahead and share the link to that in the chat. And if you're brand new to Edulastic, I'd recommend checking out this Edulastic 101 training. Alrighty, before I pass it off to our panelists, I'm just going to give a quick overview of Edulastic in the science classroom. So in Edulastic, there are over 50 different technology enhanced items, everything from multiple choice to multiple selection to some really cool graphing and math questions that can also be used in the science classroom. So some specific question types that work really great for science are multiple choice, graphing, multi-part. So with this, you can combine several different question types into one question. Drag and drop, label an image, drawing response, fill in the blank is really cool, highlight, and more. So specifically, I wanted to point out this highlight one. That's awesome. You can upload, for example, a photo into Edulastic and then have students pinpoint different parts of that photo, for example, parts of the cell or the water cycle. You also can embed simulations into Edulastic assessments, and Tina's going to talk a little bit more about this later. But for example, you can add PhET sims into Edulastic. We also have several teachers who have presented before about pairing Edulastic with science labs. Specifically, we have a teacher named Jen Lee who has talked pretty extensively about this, and it's really cool and creative, and maybe Ileana can share the link to that in the chat as well. All right, this is a really exciting piece of today's webinar. We are going to be giving away a 1-year subscription to Spark Science. By being here today, you all are automatically entered. So congratulations and thank you for being here live. For every 100 people who are here, we will give away 1 subscription and we will announce the winner at the end. So now the big question is, what is Spark Science? Spark Science is brand new to Edulastic. We're just releasing it pretty much this weekend, last week. So it's brand new, it's really exciting. And it is an additional item bank in Edulastic that includes NGSS aligned items for elementary, middle, and high school in life, physical, and earth science modules. So there are about, I think it's 1,200 additional questions that come with Spark Science. And they're really high quality questions. They were created by our science experts here at Edulastic. So we're excited to give away a subscription to Spark Science, and we will be announcing that at the end of this hour. So stay tuned. Alrighty, and at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our first panelist. First, presenting today is Cheryl Fisher. Cheryl is a biology and environmental science teacher from New Jersey. We're really excited to hear what she has to share today, and go ahead and take it away, Cheryl.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much. So yeah, I work at Overbrook High School in Pine Hill, New Jersey. It's South Jersey. And I'm teaching more of a supplemental support type of class at Pine Hill this year. So I've really found that I've been using these assessments during this time of unusual education, so to say. And the students are really, really okay with this as far as assessments with formative assessments and summative assessments as well. Next slide, let's see. Oh, there we go. As I said, with formative assessments, some students are using it for practice assessments. It'll allow them to check their responses. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Edulastic. I've used it for probably about 2 years now. I stumbled upon it in an ed tech type of conference, and I just absolutely fell in love with it, about how you can share assessment questions with your colleagues as well. And just making our lives a little bit easier in the department. We've been using these formative assessments. So there's practice assessments, which will allow students to check their responses. And you can also click the number of times it allows them to check their responses. So if you only want them to check it once, you can really see how well they're doing. And similarly for the summative assessments as well. So sometimes you can assign as a practice assessment for students with IEPs, with retake options, but I can also assign, instead of a practice assessment, a class assessment. But that will also, you also have the option to have them check their options there. If they, and they can retake it during the real time of a test. And one of my favorite things is that you can see real-time progress. You can see how the class is doing. You can see if I made a mistake on a question. Often I do that, you know, making the answer key incorrectly. And if I see that everybody's getting something wrong, it's probably something on my end. And question development. My favorite thing to do is modeling with drop-down options and the drag and drop options, especially with my students with special needs, or if they have limited options. Instead of having a question bank, you can embed just only 2 choices. You could also challenge students with up to 4 or 5. It doesn't matter how many options that you give them. But sometimes I like to just keep it to 2 or 3 instead of giving them such a wide range. The other thing is just matching with pictures from our own classroom activities, whether it is experiments or with things that they're familiar with as far as what activity we use, maybe a lab assessment, maybe photographs that we just took from the classroom. So the matching with pictures from our class activities is wonderful. We'll go to the next one. Here. So as I was saying, for formative assessments, you can assign it as a warm-up or an exit ticket. You can ask them very quick questions. It doesn't have to be 4 questions that I have here or 5 questions, but I definitely see, as I said before, something was going on with question 4. And that really offers some insight as to, is it me? Do I need to improve my practice on question 4? What was going on? Why did they get that wrong? Did I rush that material? And you can see it really took a long time for them to answer question 4. But as I said, is the format or answer wrong? Because sometimes I've done that, you know, where I'm rushing through. These are very easy to make, but often I rush through it, and I can get them done in just 5 minutes. And the kids will tell me I'm wrong all the time, and they love to do that. So overall, you know, what confused them and how can I ensure that they learn the content? And I really use it just to improve my practice as well, not just student understanding. Okay. And like I said, for summative assessments, I love the data. So as science teachers, just being able to see real-time data on how the kids are doing on a test right away, I feel like an average student score is very successful of an 86. I only give unit tests. I don't give chapter tests. I give unit tests. And you can see, I can also see that many students were absent, and definitely in this virtual teaching time, I know we're all experiencing that. But as a class assessment, this is collected and compared to the next test that I'm going to give. So that is another fun little technique. But you can see all the different ways it's presented, you know, proficient, basic, below basic. It looks like maybe my below basic, they just click through it to get it done. But Edulastic allows me to get into the entire class fairly easily. And let's see, what's the next one? So this was one of the question development activities. So I'm sure most of you biology teachers recognize this. We had gone over photosynthesis and what's going on inside a chloroplast like crazy. And this was just one of the activities that we did. We had done it on a Jamboard, but then I wanted to see how much the students really understood from this picture that we had done together on a Jamboard. So I put some steps up there and on how to make these. And these are little drop-down tabs attached to every single one of these pictures. Now, depending on the type of population that I have, maybe I would limit the number of answers. But this was really a formative assessment just to see how they had done on that day's activity. And they were allowed to check their options in these drop-down boxes. It gave 3 options. But I did limit it for other students so they could feel successful as well, where I could limit it to 2 options in every drop-down box. But they had done well with this, and they actually love this option. The other thing that you could do instead of having these drop-down boxes is that you could have drag and drop. So if you wanted to use a word bank type of assessment, you could create that word bank and have them drag and drop just right into those spots that we provided. And I do believe at the end of this webinar that we are going to have a Q&A session. And if you guys would like to see how some of these questions are developed in real time, I'm happy to do that for you as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. That was
You're
really
welcome.
cool. Yeah, thanks so much. That was great. And I love the example. I want to go back. This slide is so cool. I love when science teachers do this. It's really engaging for students. So definitely appreciate you sharing that. And that was an amazing presentation. All righty, on to our next presenter. Christopher White is an earth science teacher at a junior high school in Western New York. This is his 13th year in education, and we're excited to hear all that he has to share today. So go ahead and take it away, Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here and share a couple things that I use Edulastic in the classroom and of course, for students at home these days with their remote learning. You can go to the next slide. So I use Edulastic in lots of different ways, but I just wanted to share a couple of the things that you might take away and get some cool strategies to use with your students. If you take a look, I'm going to look at multimodal content delivery and assessment. So I'm going to share my screen in a minute, and I'll share some questions and ways that I communicate information to my students. We have real-time feedback and solutions. So that was something that I really appreciate Edulastic for, to provide students with some real-time feedback. And of course, there's explanations and solutions you can provide as well. Data-driven intervention is a big thing, I think, in the classroom, to use to drive what you can do to instruct students in the future, and to really target instruction for individuals as well. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to get up an assessment. Looks like you have to stop sharing your screen so I can do that. Okay.
I just stopped. Let me know.
Yep, I got it. I think it's coming through. All right, there we go.
Good.
So yeah, this is just an assessment that I've made up. I drew from a lot of the different things that I do throughout the year, and I just wanted to provide some different examples of how I deliver content. In our day and age of remote learning, it seems like, you know, having students access the content at home, making it easy for them and accessible is the things that Edulastic does. So I'm just going to view this as how the students would see it. All right, and so I'm going to show you just a couple different questions in different ways that I provide information for the students and ways that they can access the content at home. So each of these questions I'm going to go through shows you something a little different, just to give you an idea and some strategies and some ways that you can provide instruction either remotely or even in the classroom. This first question here is a passage question where students can read and take a look at some diagrams and even embed videos. And so, especially last year, we were full remote in our district for the second half of the year because of COVID, and students really needed to get some of the more difficult information, and I was able to provide that for them in this type of question format. So I would select the information for them to use. I would pull information and diagrams and kind of build lessons and structures using this type of passage question. And on the right-hand side, you guys can see just kind of an understanding check. And so they would access the content on the left-hand side, either in videos or reading or diagrams or pictures. For example, there's a video here showing continental drift. And on the right-hand side, they could do a quick little understanding check that I could use to assess their understanding. Another type of question, you could just provide a video. We have reference tables that we use often in our science and in our instruction, and so you can teach through that process just using a video that you could create for yourself, plop it into Edulastic, and of course have some sort of understanding check question go along with it. Edulastic is one of my go-tos for multiple ways of assessing students. So for example, I provide a video at the top, and then assess their understanding of, in this particular content is, what did I put out there? Yep, mantle convection. And so students were able to drag and drop and label a diagram, which I felt to be really, really cool as a function of understanding kind of a more holistic approach rather than just typing in an answer or answering a multiple choice question. They can show better understanding of what they learned from a video or content that they're reading. So a lot of people do probably or are aware of these types of questions that you can use, and connecting diagrams to definitions to kind of show what the students understand is a huge part of the class. It's very visual and conceptual in earth science, and so I often have students to match up diagrams, definitions, vocabulary all in one, to get a kind of a better feel of what they understand. So as a way to assess students in the class. So as I go through, there's just some different ways that I use it. Ranking, parts of the universe by size, for example, where students can rank and then label at the same time. It's just another way you can assess in a little bit of a deeper way than just a multiple choice question. We do a lot with the moon phases in earth science and astronomy. So students are able to show what they understand by dragging, dropping, and labeling things like the moon phases, which is a great way to assess students as well. So you can teach them some content through that, and then they can show what they know beyond just some of the basic understanding. Let's see, this one I put together, it was kind of labeling and categorizing terrestrial planets versus Jovian planets. So they were able to drag and drop and group as a way to show what they understand. Students are often a lot more engaged when you do this kind of question. They tend to show also, they're able to label a bunch of them correctly, but show some gaps in their understanding in just a few areas. And so it does pull a larger way of assessing the students than just picking A, B, C, or D. Just a couple more. Also, we do life cycle of stars, for example, and you can do this in lots of different science content, I would imagine, and lots of different subjects. It's just dragging and dropping and sequencing is another way I assess students using Edulastic. Just a couple more questions. Labeling for another diagram like the water cycle is also a great way to show what students know after they've accessed the content. They can definitely assess using diagrams and vocabulary. And also graphic organizers. So I do this every once in a while where I take graphic organizers where students have to drag and drop and label and show more of their understanding about what's different or similar between some of the things that we are learning about, as well as accessing definitions and matching them up with vocab terms. So that was just a group of questions that I kind of put together from various pieces of instruction throughout the year. And it's able to show you how we can use Edulastic to, also deliver content, but also assess the content that you delivered, kind of all in one stop shop. If you want to project the next slide. Cool. You can go on to the next one, I believe. And that was the sample assessment that I just shared. So one more. All right. So one of the things that I use Edulastic for also is the real-time feedback and solutions. And so when students are in class, they might be taking an assessment or a quiz or just doing a quick warm-up, answering questions. And I'll actually project live on my screen the what you see at the top here, the kind of the performance summary. And so I'll just project that. They won't see their names or any of the personal information. And they can see what questions seem to be a little bit more difficult. And students are highly engaged with that. When they look up at the screen, they hit enter on their or submit their answers, and then they can see, a kind of real-time live feedback of what the class is doing and maybe what they're individually doing as well. And also, when students are doing this, they'll get provided with feedback and solutions that you can enter in for the questions. So if you go to the next slide, for example. And so I often put in explanations to the answer. So if they're working at home on a homework or maybe a quiz and they get the feedback afterwards, you can write in either little sentences or paragraphs describing why the correct answer is correct. And I even go to the next step of actually putting in diagrams. So students use graphs a lot of the time in my class, and it can be quite difficult for them to understand without the visual of that graph. And so I put a little bit of explanation about the correct answer at the top, and then show how they can find it using the graph as well. On the right-hand side, similarly, I provide an explanation. In this case, it was about barrier islands and their formation, but I also included a video that shows the process of formation as well. So making it a little bit more concrete, providing the explanation and feedback, and even extending their learning with a video. So that's the real-time feedback and solutions. On to the next slide, please. All right, so in class, like I said, I do provide a chance for students to see the kind of the real-time feedback, similar to what you see at the top of the screen here. And I share with them the kind of the most missed questions, and I build from that some intervention and kind of response to the questions that seem to be a little bit more difficult. So at the top, you see question 5, maybe it was a lower performing question, and I share the question with them, which is on the left-hand side, and then I create a little kind of exit ticket or a warm-up activity that really targets that particular question. And so for the questions that seem to be a little bit more challenging for students, you can immediately build some feedback that maybe they walk in the next class that you're working on with them to kind of catch them up or fill in their understandings that they might have missed from the previous class. And so data-driven instruction is really something that is useful, using the feedback that you can get pretty immediately from the program. And I think that's my last slide. Yes, all right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christopher. I loved seeing all of your different question types, and really cool to have you walk us through that assessment. And I like the earthquake question, especially with all the different fault lines. So thank you for that. That was really great.
Thank you.
You have some nice compliments coming in through the chat as well.
All right.
All right. Now I'm excited to introduce our next panelist. Tina Sabatello is a chemistry teacher and a Google for Education certified trainer. She has some really cool stuff to share, including how to embed different things into Edulastic. Go ahead and take it away, Tina.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Give me one moment here, just clicking on everything. Awesome. So I'm a teacher at Maine East High School. I didn't add that in there. It's in Park Ridge, Illinois, near O'Hare Airport. I teach at a suburban high school, about 2,000 students with 72 different nationalities, and half of them are on free and reduced lunch program. So I have a large population of ELL and ESL students in some of my classes. Throughout my 29 years of teaching, I've taught 25 years of AP and honors chemistry, with the last 5 being just the regular level. So Edulastic has been really great for me in that I'm able to provide differentiation. So as Chris was showing you, how you could do the drag and drop question types, I might scaffold that for some students that are stronger and give them the fill in the blank ones, without the words to drag. But I'm here to talk to you about today about some really nifty things that I do in chemistry, using drawing response questions, unit conversions, most importantly, formatting subscripts and superscripts. A question came along in the Facebook group about a month ago, and I'm like, hey, I have that answer. I figured it out. And I'll be sharing that with you. And embedding simulations like the PhET simulations. And what I love most importantly is that you can add blank data tables below it for students to input the data from the simulation. And if you as a teacher have performed the simulation yourself and collected the data, you could input it so it would mark the kids right or wrong. And I love that. And then underneath that, if you have the kids, if you need to have them graph, they could all graph, and everything's all in one place. Because before this, what we used to do before Edulastic, OMG, you had to have all these attachments on Google Classroom or links on Google Doc. And then what would happen if you clicked on a link or an attachment, it would take the kids to another tab and they wouldn't know what to do next. So with Edulastic, we're able to provide instructions, and also we're able to, everything's all one-stop shop. And it's been amazing. I heard about Edulastic, but really ran with it when school closed due to COVID in March. And every day I learned something new and awesome about using Edulastic for my classes. So here we go. So drawing doing a drawing response question when I first started wasn't really intuitive. I'm just going to play this little video. There's no audio, so you can see while I talk. You find it under the type of question called highlight, and then you click on drawing response. And see there you can see me type in, I just write the word question, but then you click where it says you can drag and drop, and you can open up your drive then to find your video, your image that you want to draw your kids to draw on. So for example, early in the year, I had a Bohr model and I taught the kids, actually I make a video that's similar if they don't pay attention while I'm teaching them online, that they can watch the video again within the question if they need help. So I insert little instructional videos also to help the kids know how to use the tools, because some of the tools aren't intuitive to some of the kids. And so this is where you can just add skills, depth of knowledge to your questions. And here I demonstrate how to use the tool. So that's the drawing tool, and I teach, and you could insert text, math equations. There's a ruler. I teach the kids how to change the color and the font size so they can just drop the dots onto their Bohr model so they're not just scribbling them in. And so that's been really amazing. So that's an example of one drawing response question I do. You could do many others. Sorry about that. I'm just going to go back to the next slide here. All All right, and now this is an example of some student work for the drawing response and a closer view of what the menu bar looks like. The selector tool, you'll always have to click on it first. And this is a text box if they want to label drawings. And I just wanted to show you some of the student examples. And then if you want to add grading criteria, that's a possibility, especially if you're collaborating with colleagues and giving the same assessments, then you can like grade, be on the same page when you're grading an item question. Okay. And some other things you do with Edulastic, it's a math type question, is unit conversions. And there's many different ways to do it. It's definitely under math. An easy way, I put another way in here, is just when you click on it, and you'll see it on my next screen. If you haven't used the math expression formulas as a science teacher, they are great if you have to format subscripts, superscripts, do unit conversions. So I have some more slides here about that. They pertain to both subscripts, superscripts, and conversions. So I'm not going to play this video right now because it's about 6 minutes long. So they will be sharing the video with you, the slides with you, so that you could go back and see step by step how that works. But I just want to show you, when you use that math question type, you got a pull down menu, and there's basic, intermediate, or full. So you choose full to get the subscripts or superscripts, and you would click on either one of those icons. So, I didn't want to click, sorry. And you can play that for your own convenience with some popcorn. Here, if you don't want to play the video, I give step-by-step instructions how to insert subscripts and superscripts. Now, this is both for this, not just the teacher, but it's also for the student. So I do have to teach my students how to use the tools. So sometimes I'll just give them like practice, like a warm-up question, and be there to guide them so they know how to type it in correctly. Of course, if they don't type it in correctly, I can override the auto-graded question and fill in the points if they don't make it a subscript. So I do that. So I'm not going to read you all those directions. Just want to show you they're there for you. Here it is again, but here's a little GIF of me actually doing it. Wanted to show you can move that little keypad around. It looks like a little calculator, but there's many different formatting tools there for math, and you can move that around on your screen if it's in the way. So that's a GIF of me doing the subscripts in that question type. Whoops, let me go to the next and see if there's anything. And then it shows you that expected answer. Let me make sure. Okay, next one. All right, and this is my favorite. It's about inserting audio. Sorry, there's no audio. Inserting simulations, okay? So again, a video for you to play. I have some screenshots on the next slide that I'm going to talk about. So it's about a 6-minute video that shows you me embedding a simulation. And these are available on YouTube too. If you want to look me up, Tina Sabatello, and follow me. I post a lot of stuff for chem and also tech tools as well. I add a data table and the graph for kids to graph in the first quadrant. And then you could do things like scaffold. You can give them a cookbook directions with the recipe, with the directions for the simulation, or say, hey, we're investigating the relationship between the concentration of a solution and how much light it absorbs. Here, use the simulation, use these set of concentrations of solutions, and make a claim and support your claim with evidence. And there you have your claims evidence reasoning you could do as well. So it's on my next slide. Let's go play the video. I don't want the video right now. Hold on, sorry. Click. There we go. So basically the steps are create a new item. So that's a new question. I chose fill in the blank type question. Then I choose text entry, and I just click in the box, the menu. This is their menu bar. And you'll see when you click on the little media icon, which is a video icon, that you click on the embed code and you just paste the URL or the embed code. So this is the link, the hyperlink, where you can attach, include the videos that Chris had included in his. And of course, the cloud is upload from Drive. But there's the embed code. And these are the steps. Not only do you can insert your data table, you could format the data table. And then if it's a fill in, if you chose to fill in the blank, you just drag the text input to the spaces in your data table. And then there's an area below for you to enter all the correct answers for the data that you collected that you expect your students to get. Okay. And then, so Mine looked longer than it was, but you could play back the videos at your leisure when they share the slides with you. And feel free to reach out to ask me any questions. There's a lot here. I have a lot more I presented a lot of stuff on Edulastic for different organizations. So if you need anything, you could also reach out and ask me. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tina. That was really helpful. It's really cool to see the steps of how to add stuff to Edulastic.
Just turn my hair shirt.
And share my screen. Hopefully you can see it now. And Tina, if you don't mind muting yourself, I think there's a little bit of... Thanks, Tina. All right, and welcome to Patricia, our next panelist. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you now. All right, one moment here. So Patricia is a middle school math and science teacher. She is going to be sharing on how to use Edulastic and digital assessments to connect with students. She's tuning in from Illinois, and we're really excited for her presentation. Patricia, go ahead and take it away.
Wonderful. I am so excited to be here. I am a major ed tech enthusiast. I love how using the right technology can really make the walls of your classroom disappear, or in my case, the walls of my house, because I am currently teaching from home. I don't know if any of you are doing the same. But I am really passionate about ed tech and Edulastic in particular. I absolutely love what this platform offers and the fact that it is such a blank slate. You can really use it for so many different ways and in so many different ways in your classroom once you start to play around with it. So one of the things that I'm going to be focusing on today is how to use Edulastic to connect with your students. Good, for the next slide. Okay, so these are some things that were really kind of plaguing me during our switch to remote. So I'm sure none of the rest of you have this problem, but I have a lot of no-shows to class, especially on test days. It's so funny how that happens. Like, it can be a student who is there all the time, and then every test day, they don't show up to my class. It's the weirdest thing. But I have these frequent no-shows who don't come up anytime they're supposed to make or take a test or make up that test that they missed. They don't come to class. So eventually we always go down the path of trying to take it together, and then we settle on they can take it on their own at home. But then I'm getting emails for help at 2 in the morning when I am fast asleep, and I won't be answering those emails. I also have the students where, I pop into their individual breakout rooms. I ask them if they need any help. No, I got it. We're good. I watch Edulastic. I see them struggling with questions. I come in and say, hey, let's work through this together. No, I'm fine. And then they end up with a low score on the test. For some students, I feel like there is a lot more pressure talking to a teacher virtually and unmuting themselves on Zoom or Google Meets or the platform that your district is using versus in the classroom when they can just raise their hand or you're sitting right next to them and can point to things on their paper. I get incomplete assessments, so students who would take 1 or 2 questions during the class time would really take their time, and then low test scores. Responses of IDK. That is like my biggest pet peeve. They'll complete the whole test and I get I don't knows in all of their short answer questions. Requests for help that are really broad and don't have a specific focus. What don't you get? Well, I don't get any of it. I have no idea how to do this. And then it's like, okay, I don't know how to start. Like, where do you want me to start reteaching the past month of material to you? I'd love a little bit more information so we can really target where your problem areas are. And then I also get the why is this wrong? Like that I think we've all had those students who come at you like really accusatory, like you have no idea what your subject is when they get their test answers back. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, I have really good news. Edulastic can absolutely help you with that. And I have used this in my own classroom on Edulastic, with Edulastic. I'm sorry, I think I'm nervous. I can't talk. But with using this in Edulastic, it really helps solve these problems. And there are specific ways you can do this. One of the things I know I miss the most, and many of you probably miss the most, is that connection with your students. And how do we do that if students are taking tests asynchronously, if students are not showing up to class when they do this? So Edulastic is a fantastic tool, and I hope that from this part of the presentation, you get a couple of tips that you can use to help make those connections outside of a physical classroom with your students. Can move on. Okay. So while the student is taking the assessment, there are a few tools that you can use in order to help reduce student anxiety for taking tests, boost their confidence, and remove that barrier to asking for help, like I just spoke about earlier. Sometimes it really is difficult for kids to ask for help on the computer. The first one is check answer. When you are assigning your test, you have the ability to allow students to check their answers. This obviously isn't going to be perfect for every question type. If you have a short answer question or a drawing question, that's not going to be something where a check answer is going to be particularly helpful. Other ones, though, like when they have a large matching section, can be really helpful for them. Another one that's really great is allowing multiple attempts. And to me, these two really work hand in hand. So when you allow multiple attempts, the student can take the assessment more than once. You can also provide feedback in between these test attempts, which is very important. I find that during this remote teaching time, I cannot overemphasize how important timely and meaningful feedback is to our students. When I use check answer and allow multiple attempts, this really involved a little bit of a mind shift for me. So many times as a teacher, you give the assessment, it's like, oh no, I can't help you on that one. Oh, you have to do this one on your own. But then I took a step back and I thought, why? Why does the student have to do this without help? Why can't we make this into a meaningful learning experience together? Is my job as a teacher to test at one moment of time, do you know this, yes or no? If they don't, they move on never learning it. Or should I be giving them opportunity to revise their thinking and learn those concepts, dive into those concepts during the taking of an assessment? Is it ideal for the students to be learning this and going deep into it for the very first time when they take their unit assessment? Of course not. However, to me, it's much more important that that student gains that skill, they gain that understanding, and they're able to move forward. And not just that, it also helps build that relationship between you and the student. You don't get any of those comments like, oh, she wants me to fail. She fails everybody. I mean, I still probably get those behind my back, but the students see that you want them to succeed. And that is so important for our students to know that you are in their corner and you want to do anything in your power to help them succeed. When you allow them to check their answer, and I don't give them limitless answer checks, I give them one, maybe two on certain assessments, but you get some major cool points like, oh my God, they feel like they're cheating, they feel like they're getting away with something. And it helps build their confidence because they know, okay, when I take this, I might get it wrong on my first attempt, but then I get another try. It's not one and done. It's not where I move through the test, I hit submit, and I have that horrible pit in the feeling of my stomach where I don't know what my score is going to be and I think I failed it. They have some ability to revise their thinking as well as a kind of signal to them like, hey, I've already tried this. I got it wrong. I don't know why I got it wrong. I should ask my teacher. So they get that cue as well. Both those things, check answer and allow multiple attempts, you can find when you assign your test. You can also go into your override settings when you are assigning your test and click on those drop downs to use them for a practice assessment or a common assessment. You have those options available to you. I also really like using the hints, and these are put in question by question as you are designing your test. One of the ways I like to give hints are by using screencasts. So I'll record either on Zoom or using a program like Screencastify, and I will give them some hints. Sometimes this can be as quick as like, do you remember when in class we did this? Or show them models or show them a little bit of data from an experiment we did together or a simulation that we went through together. Or even sometimes I can just like hold up something and point to it, and that might help them be able to answer that question with confidence. So I highly recommend using a screencasting tool when you do this. Typing it is great, but not all of our learners do a great job with reading written text. I know whenever I give out directions, I can name, 20% of my class right off the bat who aren't going to read them. When you have a video where a student just has to sit and watch, not only are they getting that connection with you, even asynchronously, even though you're not actually sitting there talking to them in real time, they're seeing your face, they're hearing your voice, and it's making that connection with them, even though you're not in the room with them. So these are my favorite teacher tools as far as while the student is actively taking the assessment. They really help for empowering our students to do their best, as well as giving them some cues for when they need to get help from me directly. And then after the student has completed the assessment, obviously completing the assessment is one thing, but giving that meaningful, personal, and actionable feedback to our students so that they can grow and learn from their mistakes is so important. Many of you have seen when you have designed questions on Edulastic that they have an option for a solution. I will put the solution in so that when I reuse questions, I am able to take out any screencasts I've made or any common feedback that I've been giving students, and I can copy and paste that in instead of trying to find it year after year. So this way it's not reinventing the wheel. I don't have to make new screencasts and new information for students every time I do it. I have that built into my solution right there. And the reason I say this is because I often give question-specific feedback to my students. Like we've talked about, that feedback that's meaningful to students is very important, especially in these remote settings. And when I can give question-specific feedback to them about what to work on, and when it's in a video format, when they can watch me do a Punnett square, they can watch me, like Tina was showing us, put the electrons on a Bohr model. When they can see that happening and they have me talking them through it step by step, it makes it a lot easier for them. Sometimes my question-specific feedback directly answers the question on the test. Sometimes my question-specific feedback answers a similar question because I want my students to do test corrections or an additional attempt afterwards. So depending on how I want to use it, sometimes I alter my question-specific feedback and what that looks like. I also make sure to give overall assessment feedback. Now, this is not one that I copy and paste. This is one that I make individually for each student. With that being said, I think I could feel half of you just kind of like close up on yourselves and recoil in horror at the idea of recording all of those different screencasts. However, I will tell you, if you are giving detailed feedback, like let's say there was a lot of modeling on your test, or your students designed an experiment to test something on your assessment, you might want to give a lot of feedback on it. And for me, you probably heard my rate of speech, my talking is way faster than my typing. So once you get into the groove of making these screencasts, you can quickly take that link and pop that in there for their overall assessment feedback. And then they can watch a video and hear you talking to them, telling them what you think they did really well, what to improve on, and giving them really targeted, specific feedback in a meaningful way. When you make the screencast for each individual student on that overall assessment feedback, you are telling them that they matter enough to you that you're going to take some time out and talk to them specifically. This wasn't copy pasted. This wasn't something that you said to everyone. This is just for them. So that is something that's really important to me. And I know that some of you are saying, I don't have the time. Totally get that. At this point, I have class sizes of several class sizes right now above 50. So I am right there struggling with you. We're in the trenches together, and I completely understand the overwhelming feeling that a lot of us have when we are trying to grade all of these assessments. I will tell you that in the beginning, when you first start these screencasts and these little recordings, it will seem like it's taking you more time. Once you get fast with them, and honestly, once you stop caring about when you say things that make you sound weird, or when you're trying to end it and instead you make this face while you're searching around for it, once you stop caring about that, oh, it goes so fast. It is easy. Copy the link, paste it in, move on to the next student, but it's meaningful to them. So I think I've already gone over my time, but these are things that I am really passionate about. I would love to talk to you more about them. If you have any questions about how to do this, please let me know. We can do a walkthrough if that's something you'd be interested in. But those are some of my hot tips for how I use Edulastic in my classroom. I hope it was helpful.
Patricia, that was awesome. Thank you so much. And really cool to hear how you're connecting with your students even while teaching from home. That's amazing. So thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed that. And you've got lots of compliments coming in through the chat as well. Alrighty, so we are now going to move on to our official Q&A time. So if anybody has questions, please put them into the Q&A bubble now. And if your question is for a specific panelist, whether it's for Tina, Patricia, Christopher, or Cheryl, please type that as well so that I know who to ask the question to. If at this time, Tina, Patricia, Christopher, and Cheryl, if you don't mind unmuting yourselves and turning your video back on, I have a few questions that have come in that I can go ahead and ask while we wait for more questions to come on through. Alrighty, so our first question is for Chris. I'm pretty sure it came through when you were presenting. It's from Alice, and she says,
Okay.
are you seeing an improvement on students' understanding by using online formats, or is the understanding constant to your other years?
So I definitely see an improvement where the students can access that information at home in a much easier format. So you kind of build a lesson or an assignment that is easy for students to access. You search for the content that you want them to get, you find the correct videos, you put in diagrams, you put in pictures, and that really kind of targets their learning. And so they go to they go to Edulastic, they got one assignment to work on, they access that information that is targeted to the instruction that you want to give them. Then you ask a few, you don't want to overdo it, but you ask a few, understanding check questions, and then bring that, and they come back in the next class. They come back in, they bring that understanding in. If there's any gaps in their understanding, then you can target that. And so it definitely helps to kind of extend the instruction to, home learning, particularly, remotely if you don't see the students every day of the week, or if you're full remote. It definitely is a super way, a easy way for students to access that content. When they're outside the classroom, or even when they're in the classroom, you can do assignments like that as well. So I have seen an improvement, because students are able to get it outside of the classroom in an easy, effective way versus just, sitting in class. And so it kind of extends their learning. It makes it more powerful inside the classroom, and then they can do it outside as well. So it's like having a little bit of a teacher at home for the students, for them to get to the content. So yes, I have seen an improvement.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that answer. I think one of you might be echoing a little bit. I hope it's not me, although it seems to have just stopped, so that's awesome. Our next question that came in says, can each of you share, or if you have stuff to share, other resources that you use that work well with Edulastic? So maybe you're syncing with Google Classroom, or Patricia, what specifically do you use when you are screencasting, stuff like that? Maybe Patricia, do you want to start?
Sure. So as far as like what we use in the classroom, we're at Google Classroom as our school. For my screencasting, I use Zoom on occasion. I use Screencastify, and then I just use those links to embed them in there. Nothing too fancy on my end. I don't integrate with Canvas or any of the other super fancy LMS systems.
Yeah, one of the perks of having Google Classroom is that this will post directly to Google Classroom, and it'll update the grades on Google Classroom. So it doesn't do it for Genesis, but at least it posts the grades directly to Google Classroom. You can see that the students have it done, and it also notifies them of having a completed assignment for the day.
Yep, I use the same. I use Screencastify, and I also use Google Classroom. And as you can see, I use simulations as well. And those all have been wonderful with Edulastic. It's fantastic. That should be your slogan, by the way.
Thanks, Tina. Christopher, do you have any other resources that you sync with Edulastic?
So definitely you can post, into Google Classroom, the assignments, and sync up with that, and then students can get their grades and access that through Google Classroom as well. Other than Google Classroom at this point, I usually just link those two together. I don't try to, provide too many different things for my students to have to do at any given time. But once they get a hang of Edulastic, and once they get the hang of Google, it really kind of goes really smoothly for them. And they get the hang of it pretty quickly. So I just try to combine Google Classroom and Edulastic mostly.
I just want to add, I've only used a couple, but soon we're coming to a unit where I'm going to use more of them. We have subscriptions to both Gizmos and also Pivot Interactives. So those are simulations we can embed into Edulastic as well.
Great, thank you, Tina. A question that came through earlier in today's webinar, I believe it was Cheryl or Christopher was sharing how you can project the live class board to students in an anonymous way. This was asked if this was free or if this is a premium feature. That is called Present Mode, and that is a premium feature. So wanted to clear the air on that. Yeah,
you can, if I can jump in there, you can just project just the top with the bars and the data, so you can, either zoom in a little bit on that. And so often I don't even put it in present mode. So I don't even have to show what individuals are doing. I just kind of show the class data, and it does help students to really stay engaged. They can get a little competitive with other classes because I share the percentages, between classes sometimes, but you can just show the bars on the top and how long it's taking them to answer questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you zoom in, I've done the same because you can present to the students at home in a virtual setting. Don't feel so bad. We'll go over this tomorrow since you didn't do so great on number 2 or whatnot. But
right.
Yeah, there is a way to do it in the free version. I agree, Chris.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Chris, for those suggestions. We're going to go ahead and get to our Spark Science raffle giveaway now. Ileana randomly selected from everybody who is here today, and we have 2 winners. Our first winner, maybe we can have a little drum roll, is Nathan Cotton, and our second winner is Nicole Kerr-Walker. So congratulations to Nathan and congratulations to Nicole. Awesome. I will be emailing you following today's event, and we have your email already from when you registered. So again, Nathan Cotton and Nicole Kerr-Walker, congratulations. All right, and then lastly, I wanted to say thank you to everybody for being here today. We know this is a very busy time of year, and I hope that you found today's webinar to be really valuable. Again, thank you to Tina, Christopher, Cheryl, and Patricia. You guys did great. This is great. And please stay in touch with us. Edulastic is really active on social media, and we're always sharing tips and tricks and other webinar announcements. So give us a follow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Our handle is @Edulastic.